Let's see here. Welcome everybody to You Ask, We Answers. Going to give some time for the room to fill up. Go ahead and chime in the comments where you're listening in from. So excited to have you all here with us today. All right, we just getting a few more things set up. But again, so excited to have you all here. Things set up. But again, hey, let's see here. Okay, I see we got a few people in the room. All right, all right. So excited to have you all here. We're going to get into some really juicy conversation. And so today's topic, we're going to be talking about reparations. And so this is kicking off our season 2 of You Ask, We Answers. Oh my goodness. Hello, Cynthia. We've missed you. Happy Friday. Yes, it is definitely Friday, definitely a welcome Friday. It has been a very, very eventful week. So glad to have you. I hope things have been going well. I know right now there's a cold front going across the country right now. And so I wonder how the weather is for you up there. All right. Yes, welcome. I'm so excited for us to be back with you all. We definitely took some time. We got some things coming up in the works that's going to be really, really exciting. But before we dig into today's conversation, definitely wanted to acknowledge that there's just been a lot that has been going on just this year, right? Since the runoff elections, since the last time we spoke around the budget. And so really wanted to sit and just acknowledge that and give space for that right now. Right now, if you all visit our website at www.womenengage.org, we actually have just recently released our statement in response to the verdict and the subsequent events that happened on Wednesday. And so I highly encourage folks to, check it out, take a read over it, and really hear from the perspective of our team members in regards to these tragedies that continue to happen in our communities, and also to what it means for collective accountability, right? Something that is a central focus here at Women Engage is about how we actualize justice and accountability in our communities. And so, again, that statement is live on our webpage, www.womenengage.org. Wanting to make sure that folks are able to see that. You can sign on to it as well, and really talking about this need to really protect our communities, right? And so I hope you all are doing what you need to be safe, take care of yourselves, do things that spark joy, because those are the things that are really going to sustain us in this movement, this work. And so really wanted to say that. And oh my goodness, I missed you all too. And hello, Lo, welcome. Thank you for lurking. I hope this is a really good conversation and that you get to be here with us. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And so, of course, you all, today's conversation is that we're talking about reparations. And so earlier this month, in the eventful month that April has been, HR 40, which is a bill which would establish a commission to study and make proposals for reparations for African Americans, was actually passed out of committee. And that's a first. It has been introduced literally every year for my entire life, for 30 years. And this is the first time that it's been voted out of committee, which means that there's an opportunity for us to really reconcile with these issues, especially things that stem from enslavement. So this bill will actually be taking a look at the enslavement period between 1619 and 1865. And so, of course, with that today, we have tapped our speaker today, Tamara Johnson-Shealey, who will be giving us a really great insight into this. And so I'm just going to read off a little bit of her biography just so you all can understand the dynamic person that we have with us today to really dig into this topic. And so she ran as a 2020 candidate for U.S. Senate here in Georgia and placed sixth in a field of 21 candidates. She is also the founder and president of the Concerned Beauty and Barber Professionals, an organization that addresses the need to protect the health and safety of licensed beauty barber professionals and the clients they serve. She is also a founder and senior advocate of the Politics, Beauty, and Barber, an organization that works to strengthen the professional license of the beauty and barber industry and encourage licensed beauty and barber professionals to engage in the political process. She tracks and mentors and addresses policy nationwide that affects the beauty and barber industry. She is also the founder and consultant of My Campaign, a branding and digital marketing company that focuses on helping startup businesses start up. She is also the host of Tamara for Georgia, an internet broadcast that addresses politics in Georgia. She is the organizer of the Withhold the Vote, a movement that holds candidates and elected officials accountable. And she and as a hobby, she operates an online nail store that features natural nail salon products, classic fashion, and coming soon antique. She is also the mother of 2 young adults, and she enjoys reading and sharing, empowering others. Please welcome Tamara Johnson-Shealey. So welcome. It's so great to have you here. I'm so excited for this. I just want to check in, see how are you doing? How are you feeling right now?
Oh, I'm feeling pretty good. You asked me earlier how was my week, and I said it was quite eventful. This watching the George Floyd, the verdict coming in, it was heavy. It was heavy, and we didn't know what to expect because we've seen America get it wrong over and over again, and people were boarding up in Minnesota. They were boarding up businesses, so I think they were prepared for the worst, just like we were bracing for the worst. So it was a very eventful week, I think.
I definitely agree and concur with that. I remember like physically feeling sick in anticipation of the verdict. And I think what was getting me was that they kept pushing the time back, that they were going to report it out. And I was like, you're just like, oh my goodness, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. And, it's really indicative of just how messed up the system is that you have people literally on pins and needles, right? About if this is going to be the right thing when literally millions of people saw the video themselves, right? It's just.
Minus one. I never watched it. I couldn't.
I didn't watch it either. Okay.
I knew, just seeing the image of him with that knee on his neck, I knew if I watched it, it would trigger me in such a way that I would never forget. And I have enough inside of me. I didn't need to add any more fuel to my fire.
I feel you on that. Like, I too have not watched it, but I trust community, like I've heard people talk about the impact that it had on them watching it. And I was like, like, it's to your point too, like, also, I just appreciate that you stand in that firm belief of like protecting yourself too, right? Like this idea of like how we really talk about self-care. And so I really, really appreciate you for just acknowledging that, because it's like we don't have to take in all of these traumatic images because they do have an impact, right? And it's a lot and it's heavy. And so yeah, it's like
it already lives in our DNA. Like it already lives in me. So it's like it would take me someplace further than I want to go. And I'm really very mindful of, my, like you say, my personal self-care. I'm very mindful of it.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I'm already loving the energy in the room. Okay, this is in the virtual room, I should say, right? Yeah. But I'm so excited just for us to really, start digging down to this conversation. And so I was sharing to you before is that we've been doing some work talking to our community members about reparations, but a lot of folks are, really looking at reparations as a very specific thing. But I'm curious to get your insight. I know you've done a lot of work around reparations advocacy about like, how exactly can we start imagining reparations, right? Like, it just seems like such a large thing. Like, I'm curious to get your insight on that.
Yeah, I have, and I didn't choose this. And that's just the funny part about, like, I didn't choose any of this. This is, I started my political career, just to kind of give you a little backstory. I started my political career from the beauty and barber industry. I started watching my industry take take a turn. It was, and I couldn't understand why. And I started going to my state board meetings and really got engaged with my industry politically. And then I went to Capitol Hill for the first time in 2013 and no, 2012 and 2013. I went to Capitol Hill, and that's when I saw the magnitude of politics. And I saw it, in the air we breathe, the water we drink, the shoes, the clothes, the cars, everything is political. And as I started to engage more and more in politics, I ran for local office. I ran for the Georgia State Senate here in local to Georgia, and then ventured into the United States Senate race. And that is when reparations literally fell into my candidacy, and it became, who I was as a candidate. And because I started to read more and looking at data, and when the data says that by 2053, Black America will have zero net wealth, that hit me hard. That hit me hard, knowing that as a people, we are becoming a bottom caste in this country. Income and wealth are two very different things. People, they think they're making money, but that doesn't equate to generational wealth. And the fact that we have, yet to be able to accumulate generational wealth because of Jim Crow and slavery and Jim Crow and all the systemic injustices that have been done to us in the last 400 years, this is why we're where we are. And it all made sense to me, reparations has to happen. It absolutely has to happen.
No, thank you for that. And I appreciate you really starting that journey about how reparations came to you, right? I think oftentimes people think that don't really see the connections, right? And I love how you beautifully painted those connections between yourself as the individual into what we need in terms of the systemic change. And I think that's really a very critical point that, we definitely resonates here with us at Women Engaged, because that's the bulk of our work. I guess it's for us, at least what I've been starting to find is that when we start talking about reparations, the first thing is that people are saying, run that check, right? Which don't get you wrong, I understand that, right? But I guess it's what are some other things that we could start thinking about too that could also be reparations?
Well, there's been some municipalities like Evanston, Asheville, North Carolina. They've started their their way of repairing the damage. Over in Evanston, I believe it's from 1919 to 1969. They're looking at this specific time period where there was discrimination in housing. So they're trying to address the wrongs that were done during that time period. So Asheville is having, their conversations about what reparations could look like. So there's municipalities, and then there's the state of California with their bill with specific to reparations. So there's been these initiatives, and I think reparations is, I don't think we can. Of course, it is a check. Now, I'm not gonna. That is a part of it, and I don't let people get away with saying, well, it's more than just a check. It is a check. We got to right the wrongs there. But Black people, I say to us, I was actually on Clubhouse a little while ago, and we're having a conversation about we as a people have to do better. And we're a broken people. My answer to that is that we're a broken people. We are we're a damaged people, and 400 years of trauma is not going to go away overnight. This is generations and generations of work that needs to happen. So whatever it needs to be, from mental health to housing to us getting a check, whatever it needs to be, that's what it needs to be. And I don't want to limit us to saying, well, this is reparation and that is reparation. All of it is reparations. All of it.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes, there's so much with all the things that you described, because I think it's the fact that people really examining too, and what I'm excited about, reparations becoming such more of a mainstream conversation, is that enslavement was so invasive in the things that they took from us, between bodily autonomy, intellectual property, just in the ways in which we move, that, to your point, it is all of those things. It's mental health, it's housing. Okay, sign the checks. Okay, it's about job security and equity. And so I really appreciate you with talking about that scope. But I think definitely bring up the point, because I remember reading about Evanston, and they were really focusing on like to your point about the housing discrimination. Could you give us some insight a little bit more about some of the things that might be happening here in Georgia?
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna go back to Evanston real quick. One thing about Evanston's proposal, I think is problematic, is the fact that, you know, they have this, the word that they use is Black. And Black is very much so all encompassing. And how do you define that? When I ran for the United States Senate, part of my platform was to create the legal definition of those of us who are descendants of slavery, because we first have to be defined in the law, or else we'll get these piecemealing of these bills, and it won't be specific, and it won't go to who it's supposed to go to. And we don't want to, you know, we want this to be done right. So we have to have some sort of delineation of saying these people are owed reparations in America. And I came through a movement that helped me to really understand who is owed reparations. So when we talk about it, we have to be specific. Like I say, with Evanston, they use the word Black, and that is, you know, I'm waiting to see what comes out of Evanston, you know, with lawsuits, because I think that they're going to have some pushback, some serious pushback with how these funds are distributed. But here in Georgia, we have a bill, HB 541. I am super excited about it. I think it's phenomenal legislation. It was introduced by Representative Roger Bruce. And this legislation creates a commission. And here's the beauty of this commission. And I know it's going to sound, you know, for those who are on one side of the aisle or the other, this may sound like, well, how is that beautiful? But here it is. You know, it creates a commission of 11. Of this 11, 7 of them will be appointed by, because we have Republican leadership right here in Georgia, 7 of them will be appointed by Republican leadership, 2 from the Speaker of the House, the Speaker of the Senate, and 3 from the governor. Of those 3 from the governor, one of those persons will be the chairperson of the actual commission. I think it's beautiful legislation because, you know, we're in a space and a place where, you know, it is what it is. We have the leadership we have, but it opens the door for the conversation to be had. You know, whether it be Democrats, whether it be Republicans, it just opens the door for the conversation of reparations to be had here in the state of Georgia. So I think it's great legislation. It is timely legislation. And I think Georgia is right. I think as a candidate to the United States Senate, I had an opportunity to travel around the state for part of my campaign. Even though we were in COVID, I was very careful. I was traveling around and I was talking about reparations, and I talked about it to everybody, you know, anybody that was willing to listen. And I think Georgia is very receptive. I came in 6th place out of 21 candidates. The 5 ahead of me had millions or influence. So for me to come in 6th place out of 21, I've coined myself the first place grassroots candidate, you know, because I had a platform that really focused on reparations and the needs of the Black community. And here's, you know, where we miss it. You know, when we talk about policy, you can't just talk about one, you got to talk about all people. You can't talk about one people or these people or those people. We have to talk about all people. And then we have to be intentional about addressing the needs of each community. And that's the kind of campaign I ran.
Oh my goodness, there was so much juicy stuff. I don't know where to start. I think you bring up a good point in terms of like the Evanston piece about like the definition, because I know one question that we've gotten from like some of our members is just like, what does this mean in terms of like people who qualify for reparations, especially when so many folks have a hard time, you know, drawing their lineage, right, to be able to you know, showcase that they descended from those who were enslaved. And so I guess like for those folks, what would you say to them in terms of like your envisionment for how we start to create this definition?
I don't think that we're a lost people. You know, those of us who are descendants of chattel slavery here in Georgia, we're not a lost people. Remember, we were property, right? We were property. So there's a paper trail. And the slave owners received reparations, you know, after, so there's a paper trail. We're not a lost people. And I'm excited. My family has We have an older uncle of mine who's already started tracing out. And I know the stories. I'm in my late 40s, but I can tell you, I remember as a little girl, I'm Georgia bred. I grew up in rural Georgia. And I remember as a little girl, I remember my uncle having the outhouse. I remember the tobacco truck that would come around and pick people up. I remember my family not wearing shoes. Like, I remember certain things. I remember my aunt telling me stories about growing up in the quarters. Now, she's in her 70s, and she can tell me stories about growing up in the quarters. Now, as a little girl, I thought the quarters was like a subdivision or some part of town. But as I got older, I realized my aunt was telling me stories about the slave, she wasn't, of course, a slave but she remembers the slave quarters, like where we all lived, as a family and as a people. So we're not far removed, and we know the stories, and there's a paper trail. We're not a lost people. We're not. We just have to be diligent about, tracing that ancestry and documenting our lineage, but we're not a lost people.
That is powerful. We are not a lost people. I deeply resonate with that too, because a part of something that I call one of my pandemic projects is doing my own tracking lineage and stuff, and being able to trace some of my roots back and figuring that out. And I definitely agree, like, there is a paper trail out there for people. And that, there is a way for us to do that. And so I really appreciate you for lifting that up and really speaking power into that, right? And so I think too, like, what I'm interested in as well is that you mentioned the bill HB 541 that's here in Georgia. Is that, like, what can we do to really, bring life into this, to really push things forward, and so we can start actualizing these things in our lifetime?
Right now, we have a website, hb541.net. So that's hb541.net, where we are actively, right now it's about educating. Like, we're going around, and I actually went down to South Georgia this past week and passed out like almost 1,000 flyers, literally, into some communities where in the projects, and I had an opportunity to speak before a big crowd at one of the union halls. And we gotta educate our people on reparations and why this is important. So right now we're in the first phase of our advocacy campaign, where we're educating, we're trying to find those who are descendants of slaves and connecting them with this legislation. So when this session rolls back around, Georgia's on a 2-year legislative cycle. So any bill that's introduced here in Georgia, like this year, 2021, will come back in 2022. It's not dead until 2022. So this is an opportunity right now, like I say, for us to educate. But as we get closer to the fall and the end of the year, when legislators are really like honing in on because 2022 is an election year. So we don't anticipate session being long at all, because those legislators who are being primary, they're gonna want to get out of there. So we kind of need to be already in position by the time session starts. So we'll be targeting those legislators and talking to those legislators. But right now we got to build the groundswell and getting people engaged and understanding what reparations is. When I campaigned for the US Senate, was a gentleman that pulled me to the side and one-on-one, he said to me, older gentleman, he said, "Tamara, I don't know what reparations is. What is it?" And these are conversations. There's a lot of people here in Georgia, and Georgia, we don't have the best internet. One thing I found as I was campaigning, that a lot of the information that people get in these rural areas, that information is limited to television, their local TV station, very local TV station, and local radio. So if information isn't coming from somewhere else to these local mediums, then our people, and just people in general in these areas, they're not getting the information. So reparations, honestly, in Georgia, I felt like it was a new conversation, but the fact that when I went out, people were extremely receptive to what I was saying, that it was like, it really fueled me. And I think this bill, HB 541, I think it's phenomenal legislation. And I believe that if we educate first, and then we push during session, I believe this bill can get passed.
Yes, I appreciate that. And really just breaking it down to, like, this is happening through conversations that we're having in community, right? Like, to your point, like, this isn't about, like, the fanciest social media graphics or like, this kind of thing, but really cultivating those relationships with folks. And so I'm really excited about that. And I think one thing that I'm curious about too, and I'm wondering if you can really speak some life into this, is that like on the other side, right, there are people who are a little bit apprehensive about fully embracing reparations, right? What would you tell folks in terms of like how to engage in those conversations, or if they're talking to their legislators who are a little bit apprehensive on the topic, like how can they really help push the needle in the right direction?
I think honestly, I love having the conversation about reparations, but I think I love the most talking to people who probably don't get it. That those that don't get it, or those that don't want to get it, I really enjoy those conversations. I'm like, okay, how am I going to crack this? How am I going to crack? Because I'm like, we're going to get there. So the first thing I always do is I listen. And I come from the beauty and barber industry where it was my job, as I provided services, my job was to listen. So and that's literally how I learn. I learn audible. So I listen. So once I hear them out and understand where they are, I meet them right there. I don't try to go any further. I just meet them exactly where they are. And the conversation, I was just, like I said, I'm spending a lot of time on this new app called Clubhouse, y'all. Forgive me. But this conversation that we were talking about engaging white voters in this conversation around reparations. And there's a lot of white people that really get it. And they excite me because when they get it, they're off and running. Like they don't need they really don't, they go and they do their work. But the ones that don't get it, like I said, I meet them where they are. And particularly the conservatives and the Republicans, they like to talk dollars and cents. So I keep my emotions out of it because I realize that is not where that's not where they are. We won't meet there at all. So I keep my emotions out of it. It is a moral obligation. It's a debt owed, but let's keep the emotion out of it. So I always talk about how this will stimulate the economy, because it's not like when we receive reparations and there's monies. What are we going to do with it, Michelle? You think we're going to put it under the mattress, or we're going to go and spend it? We're going to spend it. Whatever we buy is whatever we buy. And some people are like, and here's my pushback I've gotten from Black people. Well, we'll spend it on this and we'll spend it on that. And they take a negative, approach, like, well, we won't do the right thing. But that's not true. I think most of us as Black people, we're very conservative because we've always had to be. We know how to make $1 out of 15 cents. Okay. So for the most part, that is not true about who we are as a people. And I really feel like we will do some serious things with this. I know we'll do the right thing. So whatever we do with it, it's our business because it's owed to us anyway. That's the pushback I get there. But when I talk again to the conservatives or Republicans, I meet them where they are, talk dollars and cents, talk about stimulating the economy. But then I talk about, they're always talking about lowering our tax burden. Well, how do you think you lower your tax burden? You're going to put these monies into the economy. Now you have a viable, people are paying more into, our system. For example, let me give you this example. There was a girl on Instagram one day. She was offered a job. Well, she had a job and she was offered $2 more an hour. And because she gets housing assistance, she wouldn't take the $2 more an hour for her job because she realized that if she took this money, that it would jeopardize her housing. So when you have people trapped in these systems, these are social programs that we can start to reallocate or maybe even eliminate, once we get our reparations. So this is where I think we meet the conservatives. I think this is where we meet them where they are, and it makes perfect sense why reparations is appropriate and why reparations should happen right now. We want to turn things around in this economy, in this country. Let's repair those of us who are most broken. Like we're like I said, we're on target to be a permanent bottom caste in this country. Repair that and bring us all up so that America can. And I said this out loud the other day. I said, and we can make America great. It worked, and it worked where I was talking.
No, I get it, and it did work. Like, good. Look, I was there because I definitely hear you on that. Like, it really what I'm hearing is that like we need to deeply invest, right, in the Black community if we're looking to, solve any of these issues that conservatives and other folks have really outlined, right? Like when we really start talking about that and using that as a point, and I think that is powerful, right? And when we start really talking about building up that equity and building up our communities, right? What that looks like in turn as well. And so I know one thing is that it's like what I'm starting to notice, and we kind of talked about this before, is that like we have this bill moving on the federal level, we have these bills moving in the city and one on the state level. I guess it's like, what can we do for folks who may be staying in areas that haven't necessarily put out a bill yet? Like, what does that aspect look like, especially with you and your ways that you do it? Like, what would you tell the folks about, like, getting started into this kind of stuff? You said that you mentioned how reparations kind of found you. Like, what would be your words of advice for those folks?
Well, reparations, let's be clear. Let's dial back a bit. We appreciate what Georgia's doing with this House Bill 541. Evanston, thank you, California, North Carolina, Oregon, New Jersey, all these states that have initiated these reparations, these initiatives. But let's be clear, reparations is federal. The federal government owes those of us who are descendants of slavery, they owe us. This initiative ultimately must be handled by the federal government, hands down. So to answer your question about how we could get those who don't have any local initiatives, let's focus where it really needs to happen. Let's push our Congress. Let's push our House representatives. Let's push our U.S. senators. We have to push them. There's a bill, like you said, H.R. 40 just passed out of committee. 30 years, John Conyers had introduced this, and now Sheila Jackson Lee has just gotten this out of committee. And now it could be on its way to the House floor, for actual vote. We are living in this moment. But guess what? The same bill is duplicated over in the Senate. Senate Bill 40, introduced by Cory Booker. There's only been a handful of co-sponsors. A handful, they haven't even touched it compared to the work they've done over in the House. So it's our time to push our U.S. senators. That's here in Georgia, that's Raphael Warnock. That is John Ossoff, and in your prospective state, whoever your U.S. senators are, let's push them to add their names to the co-sponsors for S40. I think that is the work. Like I say, ultimately, what happens here in Georgia won't benefit somebody over in Nebraska or whatever other state where there are no initiatives. This reparations is federal. In order for this to happen, we gotta push there. So I would encourage everybody to push the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Senate.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for outlining that. Because I know sometimes folks will see these bills. Sometimes they're like, well, when is it coming to my city? And I think you draw up a really great point that this is a federal part, and that people, you heard it here, making sure that you're getting connected with your senators, with your legislators, and pushing them to co-sponsor these bills. So then we can really see this happen. Because like you said, we're living in this moment. This is historic, and I guess to kind of also bring in the history, and I'm trying to keep track of the Facebook comments, so my apologies, everyone. Somebody had already mentioned about how, reparations, you mentioned it earlier about reparations being paid to slave owners, how other groups, somebody else had also mentioned how other groups have also received reparations. And I think really, again, talking about the history of it, because I think, what was it originally? There was the 40 acres and a mule, but after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Jackson cut that out as well. And so I think it's like, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to say, put into words. I'm just really excited. But I think bringing in that history and knowing that we're living in history and that people can be a part of that is really powerful, right? To really see this in this moment. When we start talking more so about the landscape, right? So getting into the weeds a bit, because I read up a little bit on the path for at least HR 40 to go into, and I know that if it goes over to the Senate right now, because of the way that it's split, it may not necessarily pass per se, and that it might be due to the filibuster. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, but you know what? That doesn't mean we don't push. That doesn't mean we don't push. It doesn't mean we don't push. So we still have work to do. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen, but that doesn't negate the fact that we have to continue to do the work, and we have to push these legislators, and we have to educate those, like we were just saying, that who may not know, who may not understand. And like I said, Republicans like conservatives, I don't try to talk to them from this moral perspective. I don't try to feel it, let them feel it in their hearts. Their hearts may not feel like my heart. So I don't try that. I mean, let's talk about, right now, America is, we've just come through one presidency. We're in a new presidency. This is an opportune time where we're in the midst of this pandemic. This is an opportune time to get it right. This is America's opportune time to get this right. We've lost 41% of Black businesses, 41% of Black businesses in COVID. I just told you 2053, they said that, the data shows that we will be a permanent undercast. 41% of our businesses are gone now. I'm sure that has sped up what is going to happen to us as a people. Like, that hurt us tremendously. And then, like I said, there's a difference between income and wealth. Yes, we're getting stimulus, but guess what people are doing with the stimulus? We're paying our bills and we're catching up. It's not like we're taking that money and we have something to to say we're going to invest it in this. I'm going to put this $1,400 into an investment. It's going to yield me so much of a return. No, the light bill is due, the gas bill is due. So we're doing the necessary things to stay afloat. So income and wealth are not the same thing. And if we're going to, as a people, come out of this, we have to have reparations, equity. We have not equality, equity. You got to make this right, America. So we can't not push, no matter what happens in the Senate. We can't not push.
Yes, thank you. Because that's what I say. Because I know sometimes it's like folks can feel a little bit disheartened, but it's like, to your point, we got to keep pushing and keep pushing, because this is how we continue to see that change, is that we got to keep banding together. And I love how you tie in the education piece. I was wondering if we can just, I know we're coming up on the hour, but dig a little bit into like the education piece about like what all is included in that. Like when we're having conversations with our folks, I know a little bit about it. It's about, I think you mentioned earlier about like debunking some of these ways in which people try to invalidate us because of like what we might purchase, because I mean, really, that's none of their business, right? Like, or what we're doing with our money that's owed to us, right? Also having these conversations about what reparations are, but I guess like what else is included in that education piece when we're having these conversations, just so we can, again, keep pushing.
Yeah, so we can, the fact that we're about 13-14% of this population, but we only have like 2.6% of this nation's wealth. I mean, we're 13-14% of the population, but we only have 2.6% of the wealth. Now subtract our athletes and our entertainers from that, the rest of us are broke. Really, let's subtract those that are really making that 2.6% of this wealth. Let's subtract them. The rest of us, Black America, we're broke. Let's talk about the fact that white America has 10 times the wealth, 10 times the wealth. They were able to, with slavery, like I said, slavery and Jim Crow and convict leasing and redlining and no New Deal, no GI Bill, war on drugs, mass incarceration, like all these systemic injustices that have been compounded on us generation after generation. We have never, we can't come out of it. In the times that we have come out of it, look, Black Wall Street destroyed, they destroy us. So we have to remind the America and those who give us pushback why this is so important. I bought a home before my mother. I purchased a piece of property before my mother. What does that say? There wasn't, the opportunity just wasn't there. It wasn't there. I mean, she eventually purchased one, but I'm just saying that the opportunities are just not there. And then we do get a leg up. We're still behind. Like I said, white America has 10 times the wealth, 10 times the wealth. So we have to start, like I said, as we educate, just remind them the historical part of it and the data. Just stick to the data. And then like I say, some people, you just got to get out of your emotions. They're not going to feel it. They don't have it in their DNA. Slavery is in my DNA. That's why I said I could never watch George Floyd. You know, I can't even watch Roots. None of those things that will trigger me, because I have enough. Do not add any gasoline to this fire.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I'm so excited about all of this, because I think to your point is that really it's about educating people about the reality of our circumstances as a community and where our people are, right? And just to your point about the lasting impacts in which enslavement and racism and discrimination and all of the things and how they intersect and impact our community is still to this day do. And so I think that is like very powerful. And so I know we're going to start winding down a bit, because one thing I always tell people is that, like, when we do this advocacy work and activism work, is that, you know, we're still people, and, you know, of course we're doing this all virtually and stuff like that. So I guess, like, over this past year or so, what is something that's really resonating to you, especially as we start talking about reparations, that you want to make sure that people know about?
This work is hard. This work is long. It's not always rewarding. You don't always get something for it. You know, you just do this because it's the right thing to do. You know, it's the right thing to do. Our ancestors, you know, when I feel myself getting tired, I do take a stop and self-care, like we were just talking about earlier in your broadcast. But, you know, I remind myself that my ancestors worked from sun up to sundown, and they might have had Sundays off, right? As far as we know. But it's like, so I can't get tired. It's like I get tired and I stop and I take care of me, but I can't stop completely. They didn't stop. And when I see them on the other side, you know, and I want God to be pleased with me, I want the ancestors to be proud. Like, you did it. You stayed in the fight. You stayed in the fight. So for me, that is my motivation, and the fact that I know that this is bigger than me. This was before me. This is a baton that's been passed to me. I have an obligation and a responsibility while I'm here on this earth to make sure that I do what I'm supposed to do and pass it to the next generation, and give, you know, prayerfully, I'll live to see reparations. I pray that I live to see it actually happen. But if I don't, I know I want the newer generation, the younger generation, to look back and say, she did her work. So that motivates me in this season where it gets hard, you know, it gets tiring, and it gets, you know, advocacy. This is some serious, it's serious sacrifice. I've sacrificed everything just to do this. And I know I'm doing it for the right reason. And that's why, you know, I'm blessed. I'm blessed to be able to do it.
Oh, that is amazing. Okay, I just want to say I am in awe. I just love your passion, okay, the motivation, because I definitely understand and relate to that, especially like over, you know, at least this past year or so, with everything that's been going on, and just like the compoundingness of everything, you know, from being inside and stuff, is that, like, to your point, really looking at this as a time that, like, we're actually at a place now where we can actualize these things, right? Like, to really do these things, but also too, to impart ourselves onto, like, younger folks and newer folks who are coming into the space to learn more. Because I know for myself, like, I'm learning so much right now. You've been dropping gems on us all day, okay? And so for folks who are listening in, if you guys have questions, comments, please make sure to drop them into the chat. We'll definitely be lifting those up as well throughout the series. But I think that, like, to your point around just, you know, again, that we're not a lost people, right? And that as we continue to talk about our circumstances and stuff like that, what I'm hearing here is that there's still hope, though. Like, and this is where we see it, is through the act of reparations, by enacting reparations, being able to lift ourselves up, that we can really, you know, just see a brighter day, right? Really solve a lot of these issues and stuff that hasn't necessarily always been tied to reparations, right? Like, I think it's like we see these things as like these one-off things or like these very individualized circumstances, but you know, knowing that it is systemic, right? Like I know for myself, on when the verdict came down, you know, knowing that this individual instance isn't enough to atone for or not a sign of justice per se, it's a sign of accountability for one person, you know, and you know, we'll see what that turns out to be when sentencing comes, but it's like the deeper need that there's some structural systemic things that have to change, and that reparations is one of the things that is going to address some of those systemic issues, right? Which is through, to your point, healthcare, mental health care, running checks, sign these checks, okay? Like, because that is definitely a part of it.
Yeah, and it's direct. That's the part that, you know, it directly, it gets to the root of the problems. So that's why I get excited about reparations. Like, you know, we like you said, these one-offs, these social programs, like, you know, there's a whole lot of talk now around affordable housing. It burns me up. And I get it. We have to have housing that's affordable. I get that. But what I don't hear, and like we've heard in previous generations, is home ownership, home ownership, home ownership. Own your home, own that piece of property. That is how you're going to build generational wealth. We're not hearing that right now. So it's like that's why I get excited about reparations, because we gotta find our place in this country, and we gotta hold on to it. Like, we gotta have land. You know, I do want my 40 acres. My mule will be a tractor because I do want to grow my own food. So I definitely want me a tractor. I'm gonna have my 40 acres and I'm gonna grow my own food. So, I mean, I just see that we are, with reparations, it is a real solution. Like, we have these problems. We as a people, we have this magnitude of problems, but reparations is a real solution.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. First of all, totally relate. Tractor needs the mule needs to be a tractor now. Okay. Like, I'm here with that. Okay. I want my 40 acres and a tractor. Okay. Because it's 2021. I honestly don't know if I can keep up with the mule myself. But to your point, like, no, but I think you're like, yes, and really starting to talk about like some of the material aspects, right? And not being afraid to name it. Like, yes, affordable housing, but like, where's the property at? The ownership, right? The things that we can start calling our own, especially in terms for righting the wrongs that have been done to our community. So I just appreciate you for uplifting that. And so we started off the thing with self-care just because of the, you know, the conditions in which this week has brought. But I always like to end it too with self-care, just like some fun activities. I know for myself, I tell people all the time, my mode of self-care right now is video games. I like video games. Like, but I didn't know if you wanted to share with folks like something that you do to like rejuvenate yourself. Oh, wait, hold on. We got a question. So like, from the chat. So thank you, Malika. The question is how long is the study expected to be if passed?
I don't know the specifics, but I want to say it's like 18 months, 12 or 18 months. Don't quote me, but prayerfully it's not longer than that.
No, that's real. That's real. Cause it's like, I think about, like, before I did more research to the subject, when it was like the study for reparations, like, but there's already so much information out here. Like,
and the work has already been done. Like, I follow the work of Dr. Sandy Darity. So for the audience that may not have heard of him, he's an economist out of Duke University. He has a book called From Here to Equality. I would encourage everybody to read it. I've gotten it on audio and it's phenomenal. That last chapter of his book deep dives into the specifics of, you know, how these trillions of dollars could be, it's multi-generational. I mean, he goes into the specifics there. This is, you know, this, like you say, this work has been done. It's been done. It's not like we need to study something. The answers are already there. The work has already been done. This commission here in Georgia with HB 541 is only 1 year. So yeah, you know, it's not like it takes a whole lot of time to figure this out. It doesn't. We all know what this is.
Yes. And I think it just ties back again to, like, I feel like the arching thing again is that, like, we're not a lost people, because there has already been extensive work cataloging the history and the impact of our communities. Like we have people who have written books, okay, there are seminars, there are workshops, there are like, it's everything that I've seen out here about all of these things. And so I appreciate you so much for lifting that up. And so we're working to get a link added to the chat for folks, just so we can have a link to that book. But if you wouldn't mind sharing the name of that book again, and the author.
Dr. William Darity, Darity. His book is called From Here to Equality.
All right. So you guys heard it there. That is dropping knowledge, dropping gems, and now y'all got some reading to do. And so really excited about that. And so yeah, I think beforehand, I don't know if folks have any other questions, but I was asking you about like what's your favorite self-care ritual or thing that you like to do to rejuvenate yourself?
So what I do is I just get quiet. I'm naturally, honestly, this is what's so strange for me to be in politics. I was so shy as a little girl. I would not talk to people. Like I was so freaking shy. And even growing up, my classmates now who see me in this political space, they're like, not Tamara, because I was very quiet, very reserved, relatively shy, even through, grade school and high school. But politics has brought something out of me. I kind of feel, now I know how Beyonce, how she calls herself Sasha Fierce or something. She has this alter ego. I think I've figured out I must have an alter ego. So going back to your question about what I do, I go back to what I know best and I just get quiet and I get still. My sons will tell you, my house is like a library. They hate it. I have grown sons and they have always hated the fact that I'm quiet. So what I do for self-care is just, if I get quiet and I get still, I know I can hear from God because he speaks to me but it's in a whisper, it's in a soft voice, and I know his voice. And when I'm quiet and when I'm still, I get direction and I feel at peace. So that's my way of self-care. I just have to go and sit and be still and just be quiet.
Oh my gosh. I understand and I resonate because at heart, I'm an introvert. I was like, in my deepest heart, I'm an introvert. And after a day of socializing, like I've had roommates who would be like, are you just sitting here in the silence? And I'm like, yes. So I definitely relate. I relate so hard to that. And I thank you so much again for just like bringing your amazing energy and your insight into this as we continue to like explore reparations and understand it more and really again dig into that education piece about it, because that's really at the heart of it. Because again, it's about knocking down misconceptions about reparations, misconceptions about the positionality of the Black community, where we can go, where we have been. Because knowing again, I'm sorry, the fact that we are not a lost people is going to be sticking with me for a while now. Okay, like I'm just saying, it's amazing. And so I know we got a couple minutes left, but I just wanted to open it up if you had any other things that you wanted to share with people before we close out.
Yeah, take a look at the HB 541 website for those of you who are local to the state of Georgia. So that's hb541.net. Go to the website, read the bill. It is not a long bill at all. It's very specific. Like I said, it creates a commission, a year-long commission that will address the impact of slavery and Jim Crow on those of us who are descendants of slavery here in Georgia. It's an opportunity to, and at the end of the commission, it's policy recommendations. So, and that's basically what will come out of HR 40 in Congress and Senate Bill 40 is policy recommendations. How do we do this? As a candidate to the United States Senate, my answer to how we do this is actually to create a federal agency. We have all these agencies for, the VA. Let's have the RA, the Reparations Administration, where we have an entire agency dedicated to our redress and our repair. That is my answer. And that's really, I feel like what we need. We need a whole agency because of the magnitude of the work that needs to be done. So I thank you for giving me an opportunity today.
No problem. It was a great honor. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's been listening today. You can make sure to stay connected. We dropped her website down in the chat. So please make sure to stay connected with everything that she's doing. And in case you tuned in a little bit later, this will be up on our YouTube page later on today. So you can make sure to catch it straight from the beginning. But again, thank you all so much for being here. We'll be back next week with another episode. And I hope you all, again, take some time, care for yourselves, but remember to get educated. We got reading assignments, y'all. Okay, so we gotta make sure that we are in the know and understand it. So until next time, everybody, have a great weekend.